Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about my Lake Toho recap. Should have had this out a little bit earlier, but had some footage issues with the recap video and whatnot, so we're going to try this here again today. We're in my tackle room. You can see some of my extra baits I have hanging here. A lot of it's already in my truck for traveling for the year, but this is just some spare stuff. So, Lake Toho, I ended up finishing in 81st place. I was about a pound and a half out of getting a check. Just never got the big bite in the 2 days. In practice, those fish were, a lot of them were offshore. They were in that hydrilla, and we had a big warming trend coming through, and I really thought they were going to be pushing up and getting shallow at some point there. And they did to a point, but not in the areas I was hoping they would, and not in the numbers they were supposed to be there that I was figuring. So I started off my morning of day one. I was a late boat number. I ended up running down to Kissimmee, but I spent the first hour in Lake Toho, and first thing in the morning I was throwing chatterbait down this one Kissimmee grass line and had a big one wake it and just didn't quite eat it, unfortunately, but it was alright. Kind of worked my way back into some pads, started flipping around, and caught a pound and a half fish just to get me started there. And after that, I made the run down to the lock and got through my first try. It spent about probably 20 minutes waiting to get all the way through it, up and down. You'll be able to see that in the video here coming up, the whole process and how we squeezed 14 boats into that lock. That it's not real big, but once I got down into Kissimmee, I ran down and started fishing an area. I had a little bit of success in practice. I was throwing that vibrating jig on the outside edges of some pads. Hooked one up pretty good, almost right away, maybe after 5 minutes of fishing in there. It was like a 2.5. Kind of worked my way around throwing that. Found some areas that had some bigger flat pads. Started throwing a fluke over top of that sort of stuff. And then I kind of realized they weren't up spawning as much as I was hoping in that area. So I went out in the middle of this bay here, and there's a bunch of hydrilla out there, and I just started ripping that chatterbait around and ended up catching a good one. It was my biggest one of the day. It was probably pushing 4. It was the only bite I could get out of there. There's a lot of boat traffic in there. They were running in and out, and a lot of guys and locals were just taking off. Like, they weren't trolling motoring out of it. So those fish were really spooked and stirred up in there. So you really couldn't count on getting many more bites there. So I started running up north to the northern end of Kissimmee, where I had a few other bites. It was, those fish were spawning. I was pitching up to these arrowheads and pad stems, and I had shook a bunch off in practice, and I went up there and I caught some more fish. There's one pad patch that ended up catching 2 on almost back-to-back cast-off, and it was my second biggest one. It was like a 3.5, and then I ended the day with 12 or 13 pounds. So I was like right in the mix. I think I was on that check cut line at the time. So going into day 2, I kind of knew what I had to do. I was an earlier boat number. I ran all the way down to the lock, and unfortunately I was like the first or second guy out of making the lock. So I had to wait through that whole cycle, and it took some time. And then I finally got down to Kissimmee, went and started in the same area where I got those 2 bites pretty quick the first day, and unfortunately it wasn't really happening in there. I didn't catch any to start the morning, so I ran up to those arrowheads, picked off a bunch of little guys, and kind of kept working up towards that one big pad patch that I had that I caught those 2 spawners on. It was like a 3.5 and like a 4. And I kept actually going up past that then, and I found one like little magical stretch that had, I don't know, I probably caught 7 or 8 keepers there, and it was where a majority of my weight ended up being weighed in from on day 2. It wasn't enough. I dropped down. I think I had 9.5 pounds that second day and ended up missing the check, but I learned a lot there. I was just flipping that EcoPro tungsten weight in those pads. I was using a 3/16 with just a stick bait on there. It was a black and blue worm, and you were just trying to get that in the areas that had those spawning fish and really just soaking it in there. Recap there. We're getting ready to move on to Grand I'm sure you guys already checked out my Seminole recap, but if you haven't, please do that. And if you guys can subscribe to the YouTube channel, it'd be greatly appreciated. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Hey, you're on the board.
Yep.
Gotta start somewhere, right?
spawned out too. That one looks spawned out too. Jeff, then it was.
Yeah.
Wasn't a bad body on it.
Through the amberjack, then when you feel it hit the bottom, you just pull up, the paper bag comes off, and then you're down there for the group. You got one? Nice.
That's a little better.
Good job, man. That's what, 3.5, 4?
Yeah, you might be pushing.
Still product. Think we might get the tall one.
Yeah, we'll get rid of that little one, the first one.
Yeah.
Dang, I thought he was gonna be big. The better one.
Nice, dude. Yes. Did you call the 146? That one's still in there, right?
The 146?
Yeah.
That's my smallest, yeah.
Okay, so that's the 4. So you get it's right here. You got 11.
It's gonna help.